It's time for another installment of Sea Hunt. It's still alive here on Scuba Shack Radio, and this time we're going back to Season 2, Episode 14, titled The Persuaders. Now, The Persuaders premiered on April 5th, 1959, 64 years ago. This episode starts out with Mike underwater, telling us that when a diver has an emergency underwater, his only thought is to get to the surface. But in this episode, his escape to the surface is closed off, and he's being circled by sharks, with no protection, no knife, no spear gun or anything. And what's waiting above is worse than any sharks, and that's when we see two guys on a boat. The scene then shifts to earlier, and we see Mike getting out of the water, climbing up the ladder of his boat. Just then his buddy, Vic Talbot, flies over in his Avalon Airlines amphibian plane. He radios Mike that he's heading out to Catalina because the albacore are running, and so are the blondes. Mike tells Vic that he can't go because he's got too much work to do on his boat. Vic says, "Never put off tomorrow what you can today," and that'll catch him on the way back. As Mike is chuckling, two guys approach him. They say they couldn't help but overhear the conversation, and they introduce themselves as Mr. Nugent and Mr. White. They're businessmen, and they need Mike's services for 3 hours. Mike says he can't do it. So White flashes him a wad of cash. Mike refuses. So they both pull out their guns and tell him it's time to cast off. We're now underway on Mike's boat, and Nugent is pointing out a spot on the chart that they want to go to. It's on the lee side of Rogers Island, 15 miles from Xena Point. White is searching the boat and tells us there are 2 full tanks and that should be plenty. Mike questions Nugent about what he wants. He tells him that they're importers of narcotic, and they need Mike Nelson to dive down and retrieve a canister of drugs. To make sure Mike knows the deal, White spots a bottle about 20 yards from the boat and blasts it, telling Mike that what goes down comes up, or not at all. As they arrive at the spot, Mike gears up in his triple tanks. Nugent tells him to look for a small container. It should be easy to see and not take too long. There shouldn't be a lot of current, and the water temperature is 68 degrees and the depth is 58 feet. Mike says, "Well, maybe you should make the dive." Nugent tells him, "No tricks, no games, because we always win." Mike then starts his descent. He only has the air in his tank. The beach is miles away, and he doesn't have any help. He can't hide his bubbles. He does spot the container and realizes that he's now in a no-win situation. The odds are they will kill him with or without the container. So he decides to destroy the narcotics worth $500,000. As he opens up the container, a small foam ring escapes, and Mike is now concerned that Nugent and White may have spotted it. Mike is stalling, when all of a sudden, the man-eating shark starts to circle. He's unarmed, and he wonders if the shark smells the fear. He is helpless. But then the shark swims away. Mike has an idea. He sends up a slate that says, "Shark down here. How about spear gun or knife?" Nugent replies, "No, shark up here." Now, Mike sends up a message. "Air gone. Send down spare tanks." This time the response is, "Come up." As Mike reaches the surface, he's in luck. Vic is flying over in the amphibian plane. Vic has been trying to reach Mike on the radio, so Nugent tells him to talk to his friend and make it sound normal. Vic says he thought Mike might be out of gas. Mike says he had a job he couldn't turn down and wants Vic to call May and tell her he'll be gone all day. Vic looks puzzled by the code. Let's hope he figures it out. As Mike is gearing up in his fresh triples, he spots something on the bench. It's a small bar or pipe-like object. He has a plan as he hides it between his back and his tanks. The small white bar is an underwater flare. As Mike makes his way down the line, he takes off his triple tanks, secures them to the down line, and heads up to the boat with the underwater flare. He needs to work quickly as he takes off his weight belt and attaches it and the flare to the boat's prop, and he ignites it. You see, fire causes panic, and when Nugent and White see the smoke from the flare, they panic. White puts on his life jacket as they grab the fire extinguisher. White jumps in the water for some reason, and then Mike attacks him from below, but he gets away and gets back on the boat. Nugent then jumps in to see what the problem is with the boat, and he unfouls the prop and jettisons the flare. Mike's only option now is to swim as fast as he can to the island. The boat is now underway and starts to close on Mike. White is firing at him with a rifle. Mike continues to dive below the surface. It looks like it could be over, when all of a sudden, Vic and the amphibian plane arrive. Vic put together the May and day from Mike's message and called the Coast Guard. Nugent and White see the plane coming, so they turn around and hightail it out. Vic lands the plane and Mike jumps in. As Nugent and White try to escape, they are confronted by a Coast Guard cutter and a helicopter. They can't escape. Mike tells us that they got their final reward and that it will be measured in years, not dollars. Now, this episode was filmed in Silver Springs, Florida, and it featured the 1957 Chris Craft as Mike's boat with the call sign EVAC. The call sign for Vic's amphibian plane was Avalon 322. And just remember Vic's words of wisdom. Never put off tomorrow what you can today. Did you ever